friends, it's Gwen. If you're short on time and looking for layouts that come together fast, this video is for you. I promise you can make stunning scrapbook pages that your family will love without a lot of experience, just by keeping things simple. Today I'm sharing 2 simple and easy scrapbook layouts that are perfect for documenting family events. They prove that not every page needs to be a masterpiece. I've got lots to share, so let's get started. Here's a look at the collection that I'll be using. This one is Simple Stories Celebrate, and it is perfect for the 2 photos that I'm documenting today. I'll also be working with 2 cut files from my cut file shop, and don't worry, if you don't have an electric cutter, you could absolutely recreate these layouts just using alphas. I'll leave links for the collection, the cut files, and all the products that I'm using in the description box below. As we've been chatting about that, I have got started on the layout and I am going to create a frame. I've left the footage here so that you can see exactly how I created it, and if you would like even more information, I've made a dedicated video which you can watch here. Generally speaking, I would use the same paper that I've used for my frame to mat my photo. In this case though, that wasn't really an option because the photo is very, very dark and blue, and so too is my frame. So I have had to mix things up a little bit and go with a coordinating pattern instead. I'm also pretty keen to use some of these tags, in particular this dark blue one. It's going to be a great way to tie in the color from the frame. In a perfect world, I would recommend that you use the same pattern paper for the frame as your photo mat. But I wanted to show you that if that's not possible for whatever reason, you can still make it work. What you will need to do though is match that color that you've used in the frame to something that's quite substantial in your embellishments. So initially my photo was 6x4, but I did have a lot of empty space on the left and right, so I have decided to trim it to 4x4. This layout design will work with either size as long as you're working with a landscape photo. So I have backed my cut file off camera, and if you would like a full tutorial on how to do that, there is a link in the description box below. This design is perfect for beginners because there's only those 5 letters to back, so it comes together pretty quickly, and I've purposefully made them very, very simple so you can cut around them quite easily. And here's the layout design. So the title will be at the bottom, the photo will nestle in against the word so, and then I will have 2 tags that will lead the eye up towards the top of the page. I've kept the background really, really simple and just used a colored cardstock. You don't have to use mixed media on your layouts, but if you're looking for a really simple way to do that, I'm going to share that later on in this video. With the title, photo, and tags in position, I can now move on to my embellishments, and I am going to start with the largest ones first. I have done a sweep through the collection and pulled out some of the elements that I thought could work. Did you know that selecting embellishments is just as much excluding items as it is choosing items? If you're ever creating and feel really overwhelmed by the selection of options, it's a really good idea to just go through the packs and exclude things. There will be items in all collections that automatically don't fit the page that you're working on. So it's a really good idea just to go through and get them pushed aside so that they're not going to distract you from seeing the elements that really will work. So you can see here those few elements that are on my table, they're the ones that I think will work, and then all of the elements in the bowl, they have been excluded. I've done exactly the same thing with a die cut pack on the left-hand side there. If you want to simplify your scrapbooking, I would really recommend that you give this a try. So I am going to work on 2 embellishment clusters for this layout. The first one will be above the photo here and will line up with the edge of the tag. The second will be above the word O. And this is exactly why I use my ATG to secure things down. It is repositionable. I'm going to move the flag die cut up ever so slightly because I want to nestle this banner piece in underneath it. When I'm adding embellishments like this, I'm very conscious of the flow of them and how they sit in against each other. It's kind of like a puzzle. I want them to sit and fit together really well. I'm also paying attention to the shape that they're making. So if I was to draw a line all the way around all of the embellishments, imagine they're all one big shape. I want that line to be very interesting. I don't want it to be a square shape. I want the edges and the outline of all of the little bits and pieces to be very interesting. Oh, so many of you have asked me to share more about how I go about creating clusters, and I've got so much to say about it, and I felt a little bit overwhelmed and not sure where to start. But I have written some notes and I'm going to put some things together for you all. So if you have not subscribed, now would be a good time so that you don't miss those. It's time to add in some textural elements. Up to this point, I only have papery things. So I've got my die cut, which is paper, my cut file, which is paper, my photo, my background, all paper. I want to add in some things like enamel dots, flare buttons, puffy stickers, those kinds of things to just give the layout a whole extra level of detail. How good is it that brads have evolved? I remember these things used to have a pin behind them and you would actually have to put a hole in your layout to use them. It made it super hard to audition them and I actually was a little bit afraid to use them. So I am loving the stick-on versions. Here's a look at all the details so you can see the layered embellishments and how it's all come together. On to the second layout, and it is actually using the same collection and it's a photo taken at the very same birthday. I'm working with this cut file, and as I mentioned earlier, I want to share with you the simplest way that you can add mixed media to your background. Mixed media used to terrify me until I learned this trick. So if you're brand new to it, I highly recommend you give it a go. So what you want to do first is generally map out the plan for your page. Now I'm actually using a very, very similar design to the layout that we've just created. This is what I would loosely call batch creating. I'm creating with the same collection on the same day, and I am going to use a design that is very, very similar. It's a great way to create if you're looking to get pages done more quickly because generally speaking, this second layout comes together really fast. Okay, so onto my background, and I am working on just a plain piece of white cardstock. I have not added any gesso or anything like that. I'm going to apply the ink behind the cut file position just by using a brush with circular motions. I prefer to work with lighter colors because then you can build the color up gradually. If you go with something that's a bit bolder and darker, you'll have to be very careful to apply the ink very lightly at first. So at this point, the bottom half of the cut file is stuck down, but I've left the top half so that I can lift it up and apply more ink if I need to. The girls who are more experienced with mixed media will always just go ahead and add it to their background first. I really struggled with that. I've learned that it's so much easier for me to have a basic plan for the layout first and then add in the mixed media after that. The little applicator brush too was a game changer. I'll be sure to link that in the description box below. So whilst the design for this page is similar, it is also quite different. It is more centered. I'm going to add my tags to the right-hand side of the photo because the photo is pushed more towards the center of the page. You'll notice the banner piece this time is down the bottom underneath the word happy, and that is very centered as well. I am still going to have two clusters for this layout. The main cluster will go all the way down that right hand side of the photo, and I'll balance that out by adding a smaller cluster above the C in the word choose. Instead of having the flags up the top there, I am going to go with a balloon element. It wasn't sitting quite right, so I do want to just glue down these two elements first and then I can add it on. I am using a little bit of foam tape just for some extra dimension. I do like to have different levels of dimension within the clusters themselves, so some elements will sit flat to the page while others will be raised up with foam. So I'm super happy with how that right hand side is looking. The left hand side not so much, and I do find that is better to work section by section. If you get one cluster right and you're really happy with it, I find that the flow of that flows onto the rest of the layout. I find it's much easier to work one cluster at a time than trying to get your head around 3 clusters all at once. Okay, so we also need to talk a little bit about color balance for this layout. I have introduced red. For the first page, I avoided the red in the collection. This layout, I wanted to add that because our little elf Candy is red and I want to pull out her color a little bit. It will also help this layout to look a little bit different from that first layout that I shared. These layouts are going into the same album. I don't mind that they look similar. In fact, I like that about them, but I do want this one to have a little bit of a point of difference. I did like the red on the left there, but that element for me was a little bit too big and felt a little bit heavy. So I am just going to leave that tiny little sentiment that says woohoo and the present, but I am going to pull more red in on the right hand side in a moment here. Things are getting serious because I am gluing stuff down. That's a cute little puffy sticker, so I have added in a couple of elements that add that textural detail. I'm going to add a mixture of the brads in the larger size and then some smaller ones in a very similar way that I would add enamel dots. When adding these, I generally work in odd numbers, so I'll add 1 or 3, not usually 2 or 4. There are no rules in scrapbooking, so do whatever your heart tells you, but I know many of you ask for guides. I have had a think about that red circle element and it will move here in a moment. If ever I'm not sure of something, I will sometimes just let it sit. Just take a breath and just see how I'm feeling after a couple of minutes. There is usually another area on the layout that I can work on in the meantime, and very often inspiration strikes as I'm still working. Here's my solution. I am going to move it onto the right, and then that will create a visual triangle with the pops of red on the page. So now that you've seen how to put together these two quick and easy scrapbook layouts, you might be looking for ways to take this to the next level. In this video, I share how to make a layout that looks complicated but isn't. It's sure to impress and it will come together faster than you think. I will see you all in the next video. Until then, bye!